So I guess now we can talk a little bit about how it gets ported. You think that's
Well,
a good place to go?
before that, so the thing that Gnome has actually changed? What was that component doing?
You mean the GNOME session component?
Yeah. The part they've swapped out for a stronger dependency on systemd.
So at the moment, I think I kind of brushed up on this that basically GNOME session was pretty much as someone actually just recently mentioned, a poor man's systemd re-implementation, where
Mhm.
it pretty much just watched the services and kind of just waited for them to die, handled shutdown and all that.
Mhm.
It kind of worked, but there were some other things that something I actually wanted to brush on a little bit. Something for GNOME 50 that's being worked on right now is session save and restore. This is
Mm.
something that GNOME does not actually have right now, but you can technically use it now. It's just kind of stashed away. But with the way things kind of worked, it wasn't too possible. I mean, they could have figured out a way for sure, but it wouldn't be pretty.
Mhm.
And and believe it or not, one of the most impressive things that was mentioned with this whole switching to just okay, we're going to have the init system handle this as a user daemon,
Mhm.
is they removed about 50, I believe it's more than 50% of the GNOME session code, completely sliced in half.
Okay.
It's incredible. I mean, so but other than that, GNOME session, it obviously handles logout shutdown. In fact, the way it all works right now is GNOME or GDM. That's a big one. The GNOME like display manager.
Mhm.
Basically, it will spawn this GNOME session thing, and it will also pass an argument like, okay, GNOME dash login, GNOME dash Wayland, and it will pretty much that will handle starting everything up.
Mhm.
So, I was there anything else you wanted me to go over
No,
on
no,
that?
I think that's good enough.
Yeah. So anyway, so you basically now the exciting part is how does someone who doesn't use systemd basically replace everything? Like how do they make this work?
Mhm.
And
So this takes us to
surprisingly,
your GNOME
it's
session OpenRC project.
yes. So where is my web browser? Here we go. So the way something that will surprise many people here is that GNOME, and at least Adrian, he actually intended for other init systems to play in.
Mhm.
And so this is why I don't call it a hard dependency, because while it technically needs it out of the box, this was intentionally designed. Like it's not like there was some code I have to sit and comment out, put it if zero, uh, do this and remove that. No, it's nothing like that. In
So there's no
fact, it is
forking
all
of GNOME that
entire,
needed to be done. It's just a change on the OpenRC side.
almost. There, you
Okay.
do have to add a C file. This is because you actually, basically, in the GNOME session repository, if I actually look at the upstream here, you'll see this little file here called leader-systemd.
Mhm.
There's also this gsm-systemd, but I believe that's just not called on it's only used by leader or leader systemd. So
Mhm.
basically, you have leader main, which spawns the other service, which is leader systemd.
Mhm.
And what is special about that is that file right there, that single C file, contains everything relating just to systemd. Nothing else is involved. It does all the service spawning. In fact, it is pretty much the service that gets called by GDM. It will call GNOME session, and it calls this systemd thing, which is called GNOME session init worker. It calls that with the argument like, okay, GNOME login, GNOME Wayland, and boom, we're done.
Mhm.
At this point, that will spawn, at least with the code how it is, it'll say over dbus like, hey, start this service, start all these services, start like these dbus services, GNOME setting stuff, all the stuff that GNOME needs to start working. And
Mhm.
at that point, that's it. So what about the non-systemd distributions? And this is where the kind of that misconception comes in that, oh, GNOME doesn't care about um, non-systemd, which is surprising. I actually found some GNOME projects actually have support for Elogind. Um, So there is clearly effort actually put into caring about those distros that are upstreamed. And so believe it or not, actually, the reason the GNOME session developer doesn't want this stuff upstreamed is because they can't maintain it. They have a testing, unit tests and all that stuff that they have to maintain. Like they actually use like GNOME OS for that stuff. And unfortunately, they can't sit and babysit, every init system on the planet. So they basically say, just modify these 2 files and add your init scripts, and you're done. That's it. And then you can apply it or whatever you got to do to get it working. My approach is nasty, but it's basically we just rsync the changes over, and it'll copy it to the. Before I actually maintained a full fork, but someone said it's not a good idea, and I agreed with them. So this is what we're doing for now. So if you have the GitHub thing open for my OpenRC patches, you'll notice that there's one thing here that stands out, and it has to do with GDM, which is not related to this technically, but you might notice you have to add this user called GDM-greeter. And this is another good thing that I think
where
that
is that under?
It's under applying the changes. And then you'll see like a second little code block. It'll say user add GDM greeter, all that stuff.
What file is that in? Sorry.
The README.
Oh, sorry, the README. Okay, yep.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I missed.
So
okay, yep, I see it.
You're good. So GDM, there's another thing that another system dependency, but the way I like the way this was handled is that for GNOME 49 there is a fallback code path. Essentially, there's a problem with GDM right now where they have only one user called GDM greeter. I'm not sure how KDE and all these people do that. They probably don't, but essentially there are some weird little quirks with only having one user. Like for example, there's only one dbus instance or something like that. So for example, if you change let's say you connect over RDP, like a remote desktop connection, and you change the volume on one session, well, it changes the volume for all of them. And there's some other stuff like auto start, some other weird stuff, just conflicts that can happen. So basically, there's this term called like seeding with like login and all that. And essentially, when you only have one user for GDM, you can't really handle that. So this is where this thing called login user DB comes in. You might have heard of it. And it basically is a way to dynamically allocate users. As crazy as that sounds, it's kind of like if you could do user add, but without ever calling user add. It'll do it for you. It'll delete it when it's done. It is crazy, but it's done specifically to work around some of these weird quirks with GDM and these bugs. And there's also another issue like accessibility support. I know like their little Orca thing had issues with multiple seats. And this was required to fix that actually. So, well,
sorry, or for anyone who doesn't know, is a screen reader. Just yeah.
Okay, yeah. That is pretty much that. And however, there's a bit of a problem with this user DB thing. Is that Elogind? For those who don't know what Elogind is, this is a fork of the systemd login D. It's basically just the parts for login D snipped out. What is login D? It's basically like session management. Like, okay, log out, log in, users logged in. It's pretty much every modern desktop needs it. KDE needs it. So there's a fork called Elogind made by, I think, the GNU Geeks developers, GUIX, and they actually recently upstreamed UserDB support, except I had to open an issue. And unfortunately, they are missing one of the modules needed. And this is actually how I learned today about the Slackware stuff, because a Slackware developer also responded to my issue. Let me get Elogind. He actually responded this morning. Good timing, thankfully. But that we basically need this little NSS plugin, which is like a user hook thing, whatever, mumbo jumbo. It's needed for UserDB stuff to work, and it's not included. I don't know if the developer died or something, or if he had a heart attack. He hasn't replied yet. He hasn't replied to anything in a while. But essentially, we can't use UserDB yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that sucks. But whatever. The good thing is that Adrian, the GNOME session developer, was nice enough to actually leave some fallback code, which is very generous of him, that will essentially just rely on old users. Except you can also specify like GDM greeter 2, GDM greeter 3. At the moment I only allocate 1 because seats are kind of I'm not going to say a niche edge case, but not as common.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need more users, well, you can just create more users.
Mm-hmm.
So as a workaround, until GNOME 50, which believe it or not releases in like 2026 later the year, which is next actually. He left some fallback code, and in fact, basically until UserDB support works in Elogind, this code will be removed. But I talked with Adrian. He says if people have to keep relying on the hacks, it won't be removed until Elogind gets their shit together.
Right.
So that's good. It's very good for me because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to even do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that solves that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to kind of reiterate on the whole GNOME session stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, GNOME, you have to modify a few files,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much all you change, at least as the person maintaining this, is you just replace the systemd unit stuff with your own init system.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I was actually forking. I was pretty much just forking. I'm going to turn a fan on. Sorry, but
No, it's fine.
Let me know if it makes any noise. But pretty much I just like called out to the OpenRC like service thing, and I would pretty much just start the username and it's like, okay, start GNOME shell, start GSD.
Mm-hmm.
Later, I talked with Navi. Navi is the main developer of OpenRC. They've been really friendly to work with. I kid you not, everyone's been friendly to work with, which is very surprising. I probably ate up so much of Adrian's time just sitting in. We would sit for hours trying to debug some of this stuff. He's been a blast, and which kind of makes me feel bad for some of the stuff he's gotten for doing all this, because he's been extremely helpful. He's put all this effort into making sure it works for all of us. Instead of
No, every
just saying,
interaction I've had with him has been totally pleasant. Yeah, he seems like a totally
awesome
fine
guy.
guy.
Yeah. Like he's been willing to work with everyone. He put the effort in to make sure that us. He didn't just pull that whole mentality of like, oh, use systemd or die, like and that saves so much of us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, worked with Navi, and for the most, like, they're helped me get some stuff figured out with OpenRC.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have a library called librc, which is a C library, which lets us
lib what? Sorry, what's that?
librc. It's kind of
librc.
hidden in the it's kind of hidden in like the OpenRC code base, but it's
Okay.
basically like a library for just stopping services, switching run levels, all that fancy stuff. I'll send you the link later. Don't worry.
I found a package on Debian. I haven't found the
You're right.
actual repo, but close enough.
Oh wow, that is it.
Oh, here we go. And and it just links to the OpenRC GitHub. I'm not going to find it in this GitHub. Okay.
I'll send you the direct link to it later.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, that's just it's kind of unrelated, but I just switched to using that library. And basically what I do here, if I look at my code and in this case, remember I told you about the leader-systemd thing.
Mm-hmm.
On my version, I just have leader-openrc. Who would have figured? And basically what I did was I copied the code from leader systemd. It's pretty small, like 300-ish lines. Not too small, depending on who you ask. I don't know, but pretty like simple stuff though. Like all it really does is it takes an argument, Like for example, are we gnome-login? Are we gnome-wayland? And it spawns a service. That's it. That's the whole everything. So you pretty much, I have to do some weird hacks at the moment because one thing OpenRC struggles with is environment variables. And in fact, so I worked with Navi a little bit, and pretty much we got some environment variables set up. One interesting thing is she implemented like a little environment variable thing where we can basically upload environment variables to services. And we actually did this a little better than systemd, believe it or not, because systemd, the way it is you upload the environment variable to. I told Adrian about this, and he was like, "Oh, that's actually pretty cool." We upload in systemd. You upload an environment variable. It's the same variable for every script. Like for example, let's say the display variable or dbus variable. Every service that depends on that is going to use that same one. So what we did for OpenRC, or rather what she did, was basically all of the each service has its own and it has its own little scope where like you can
Sorry,
have
you cut
this
out for
service
just a
has
second
these.
there.
Where was I last saying?
The last word you said, when you're talking about making the or handling of the variables, you just cut out when you said, I think probably an important word.
It probably was an important word. So basically what it will do is it has its own scope, and each service can import environment variables from one service without creating a messy global. For example, let's say you need Gnome to have the display variable. This is actually one of the variables it uses. And you also want to have Wayland running, which it needs its own X setting display variable. So the way they work around this in systemd is they create specific variables. I think this is a GDM thing actually. And they just upload it to systemd, but they create them uniquely for each service. Well, with OpenRC, we have a nice system where now we would set an environment for the service and only the service, and it won't create a messy scope all over the place, and it's pretty neat. So yeah, I was talking about that. So other than the hacks, we have some hacks where I basically just hard code the display, for example. I don't like doing that, but X11 is kind of weird with GNOME anyway, so we'll have to figure out what to do with that. But until then, I'm just hard coding the dbus variable and stuff. It's gross, but it's what we're doing until we get this feature, merged upstream. As far as I'm concerned, they said it works. There's a PR for it. I did some reviews of it, and I think it'll get merged pretty soon. And by the time that gets merged, chances are this will also be merged into Gentoo. I guess I briefed up on pretty much everything with that.